information.
Got it, Nate, if you don't mind, that's great. So this policy isn't intended to prohibit or influence the school board at all in terms of what they want to spend money on or how they spend money on. This is really an outcome of some confusion around money that the council had appropriated for the running track. And then it was used, we were informed it was used for another project and that the school committee was going to use different money for the running track. And then Mr. Sutton brought up a new transfer, going to return funds and bring funds back. So I will modify something that Michael said, which is I don't even intend to have, I don't want, or I don't think we should have evidence prior to the vote, but prior to the finance department actually making payments to the school district, they should have evidence that a purchase order was signed, which doesn't require any money, but promises payment, or a contract has been signed for a certain amount, or the third one is that that there could be some use of funds or reimbursement, as it were, right? And so the purpose is really an audit control to make sure that what the council votes on is actually executed. So Michael Dolan at the last meeting said that this may be illegal. I think he was saying that because we can't tell the school committee how to expend funds, and I agree with him on that. But this is like a bag of cash. When you hand it across the wall and the council has voted in the majority, you want to make sure that that intention is followed through. And that's what this measure is really about, is to make sure that the intention and the knowledge that the council had to approve a payment or a request, that it's followed through exactly like that. And if not, then it needs to come back and get refreshed into what the proper form was. And so it's just a way to make sure that everything in terms of audit and control is well maintained. Any questions on that?
I'll open it up to the committee if they have any questions for Mr. Wood.
So you pretty much answered my initial question. Was going to be, was this in response to the track? And I assumed that, yeah, that's exactly what it was. But I guess you brought up the point of, Mr. Dolan expressing legal concerns. I'm assuming this has already been worked through with the town council, legal counsel.
Wes, Mr. done that because I haven't taken that step, but maybe Michael, you've talked.
Yeah. So excuse me. Jason, our town attorney, has seen it. He does have some minor concerns, but I think as this is a policy, essentially a council policy, that I don't think he'll have too many legal concerns, specific legal or broad legal concerns. He might have some wording concerns, but I think for the finance committee's consumption, I don't think there's an issue on a broad level. No.
I have a question. Would it be in the best interest of maybe the district to be trained, if you will, when they are asking for funds, to maybe draft their petition in such a way that says, we're certainly the intent is to use the funds for the track, but once the funds have been approved, we would like to be able to use the funds for school initiatives. And the reason I'm framing the question the way that I am, I don't disagree that we need to be able to audit accordingly. My concern is, would something like this policy, will it hold up, any, because sometimes things could just be sitting, right? And by no means am I suggesting that the council would hold anything up, but would that handicap the decision making within the district from being able to be proactive and do what they need to do once whatever the amount has been approved to sort of handle school business.
I can answer that if that's okay, Nate. So, so Rick, in this case, we actually had quite a bit of information about the intention. There was the football track and other items are on their capital plan, the 5-year capital plan, and that gets modified every year. And so, and Chris is right. One of the reasons that this came out is because we did have a lot of background information. There was a number assigned to it, and it's a split for the district. It's a split revenue. So some of it comes from Bridgewater and some of it comes from Rainham because it's the district model, right? But we, and I say we, so Eric Moore and I had questions about the amounts because the initial amount just looked to be too round a figure, right? So we'll take $576,000. Boom, that's it. So we asked, what does that mean in terms of, the actual cost? We were asking for things like, is there a breakdown of the estimate? Is there an estimate? So that afternoon before the council vote, we had an email exchange among Eric, myself, the facilities person over at BR, and the vendor for the track. And it went in several cycles to one point where the vendor's going, oh yeah, I could do it for $750 instead of $850. So, the confidence in the number at that point was kind of low. It was a ballpark number. The second piece to this puzzle is another policy that you should review if you don't know it already, which is our free cash policy, our other cash policy, right? So when the state certifies our free cash, there is a structure already in place that was approved years ago by the council that takes our free cash and splits it into capital funds and a couple other items, but mostly capital items. So what we're doing is, in essence, okay, we taxed a number of different things, but we didn't spend the entire estimate, expenses. So now we have this free cash because of other things, maybe the state gave more money or something else. This money goes into capital expenses. The track is a capital expense. So when you're requesting to withdraw money from a capital expenditure account and use it for a capital expense, it should be used for that capital expense that came off the plan. And it should have good background. You wouldn't have someone come to your house and just start throwing windows in, new windows, without getting an estimate or figuring that out. And that's all this is really asking for is a little bit of prep work before the council votes, but ensuring that the target use of the funds is actually where it's going to go because of the council vote. The council didn't vote on, a dog park or something else. They voted on a running track with a specific amount behind it. And this just ensures that before finance actually goes and pays out, that they see some evidence that there's commitment behind that payment. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill, for the thorough explanation. It's a lot clearer. Thank you.
And I think I see this clearer now, Bill, too, that this isn't meant to be a power grab, quote unquote, here. It really is about the town council. I get to that point, you're the elected officials here in town. And it is some money and, legislation, which is essentially the funding mechanism. You're funding these large capital projects. I can see why, if it's used for something else, then the funding was for another project. I can see why we need clarity here.
So I'm confused. If someone's coming to get $500,000 for a track, aren't they bringing their due diligence before that money is released? Like 3 different quotes?
Yeah, that had already happened in this case, Brian, actually. So the money was sent to him for the track, but it was not used for it. And they had done their due diligence. We had this conversation about what they had done.
No, I'm confused. It's Julie.
Okay, go ahead, Julie.
You're saying they did do their due diligence. From what I understand, I think they did their due diligence. They presented it, and then they found somewhere else to access it. And when we corrected it, correct me if I'm wrong, like that, like you said, I mean, they gave the money back, right?
That's right, they did.
Right.
So,
And
I
then-
mean, they didn't have to do that. I don't think that they were trying to slide anything by us.
I don't
they
think
were
anybody
fiscally
was saying that.
responsible by finding somewhere else to fund it.
I don't think anybody was saying that, Julie.
I don't know. Well, I also personally, I don't know. I don't know that we micromanage it to that extent for somebody.
I agree.
Somebody else, and I do, for me personally, I would rather know from Jason that he's 100% good with this. So if we're not gonna table it, then I'm gonna vote no. And not that I don't think they should be held accountable, and we know where they're spending it, but I think using an example to create it for something where they returned the money and corrected it and found a better way to pay for it, because the alternative would have been, they didn't have to find it in the E&D, they could have spent it and come back for the other project, and we would have been out even more money. Right? I mean, I don't know, that's just me. And if you knew that they were looking for an answer from Jason, you talk about making an informed decision. I don't want to vote for something that the lawyer might think is okay, we might think is minor. That's
Okay.
just my
Yep,
opinion.
Very
Thank
good point. Very good point, Julie. You always bring up angles that I don't necessarily think of myself. So great point.
So what it's
Yeah.
worth, I would only add, sorry, Bill, I would only add that from our perspective, we go through an audit every year, and admittedly, I won't get into the details, but admittedly, the district, the money that we give, the capital money we give the district, it has a different flavor to it than the capital money that we dole out, for other departments. So it's just governed by different laws. However, we do go through an audit every year, and during that audit, the auditors pull all the records of our capital expenditures. And to the extent that we can have backup for every piece of capital that we voted, that the council has voted, we're far better off in that audit process. And the audit, while something like this may not be required of a town, every time we can tighten up our financial controls and policies, it gets us a better bond rating. So it's, it's part of sort of a progression, in my view, part of a
Did
progression.
they not give you the paperwork for the project that they spent the money on?
What was that, Julie?
Did they not give you the paperwork for the money that they spent the project on? So if an auditor pulls that project, you have the backup?
No, we get a capital assessment, and it's basically just a dollar figure, and it's a listing of things that they want to spend the money on. So we don't get anything really other than that. We have the capital plan that the school board votes, and we have the information technology plan that the school committee votes, and that's really all we get. We don't get a whole lot more than that. So
Yeah,
I think
the auditors ask you for something that you didn't have to support it.
right, and I'm not saying that it's a huge issue with auditors. I'm just saying that the more information we have that backs up the expenditures that the appropriations that the council votes, the more thorough our controls are, and the more information the public has, but also the more opportunity we have to increase our bond rating, which is very important. I mean,
No, I
think that everybody knows.
I just think that
Yeah.
if it should be, we're gonna hold it to it, and we're saying it's to get a bond rating, then it would be nice to have the right wording that Jason thinks is appropriate, however little you think they might impact the policy, I guess. That's just my.
Yeah. Yeah, so if Jason has some edits to make to get the wording right, that's fine, but the intention. So one of the things, Julie, is that so I may have my exact figures wrong. So I think we voted 576,000 that night. And the revote that Mr. Dutton brought back last week was for 467,000 or thereabouts. So $100,000 disappeared in the deal. We didn't get the 500,000 back, and we revoted for something, And, you know, I had a lot of people calling me as a counselor saying, oh, support the track. And I did. And I did it to the best of my ability with due diligence, asking how much is this going to cost? You know, 6 lanes versus 8 lanes, and understanding that, understanding fencing, understanding scoreboards, and understanding what the money was going to cover. I think many of us did that. But then, you know, it just got turned around and got delayed and was reallocated elsewhere. And so as a counselor, you know, my job was to make sure that I supported the capital request.
How many times, Bill, has the council sent transfers from E&D to somewhere else? You approve it in one way and then you approve a transfer from E&D, because that's what the school committee did, right? They took it from somewhere else, you know. I mean,
Yeah,
you voted up
At
and
the
you moved
right, at the town level, we have the free cash policy. It goes into accounts and like when we covered, for example, Flag Street repairs, that came out of one capital expenditure account. So by formula, it goes into those accounts. It just doesn't say, we don't have an E&D on the.
Again, I'm not against the policy. I understand it's good for the, you know, everybody wants to know what they're voting on. I just feel that if this particular incident didn't happen, why did it take so long to get, if it was so important to the bond rating and so important to know what you're voting on, if this one incident didn't happen, would you be bringing this forward? You know, the
Oh,
time.
there's another incident that's tied to this. I don't need to go into details because that's
No,
not
but
a document, but there's been, you know, a couple different times, like we voted for, I think for the middle school for doors and windows, and there was a delay in that process, you know, so it's not the first time that this has happened.
no, okay, that's
Can
fine.
I like, you know, I like the idea of some oversight when it comes to finances, because obviously checks and balances absolutely make sense. And thank you for the additional information, Bill, with respect to the 5 plus whatever it was, and only 4 plus came back, right? Obviously we would have, you know, I agree that it would need to be accounted for. What did that 100 plus, what was it spent on when we had approved for the track? I guess the one thing that I don't see on this policy, you know, is that, you know, that funds that are approved and supposed to be allocated for X, if X won't be executed again, I like the idea of the institution, whatever it is, whether it be the school district or whatever, right? The funds should be returned, and then allow that individual or that organization to then repetition for funds for any new projects. I'm not seeing that on this capital expenditure policy. And also there seems, you know, if the lawyer has not looked at this yet, and if the lawyer, well, if he did and he still got concerns, then I think it would be premature of us to even vote on something like this without the lawyer vetting, you know, every possible concern that he might have in reference to this capital expenditure.
Okay, thank you, Rick. You know, so I'm starting to hear from the committee that maybe we should table this and just have, you know, there seems to be some concerns with the
Well,
language.
you mean postpone.
Postpone, thank you, not table. Thank you, Council Wood. Postpone to our next meeting, which will be soon enough. Just real quick, before we make that decision, Brian, I apologize. I cut you off kind of quick back there. Did you have anything else that you wanted to expound upon on the subject?
The only thing that, you know, just thinking about the data, is this something that happens 3 times a year, 20 times a year? Is it expenditures that are over 50,000 that we want to have this policy be effective for? Do they have to actually adhere to the policy, or is this just to make us feel good, so to speak?
Yeah, I think we also put another policy in for under $10,000. The school district can just expend it and ask for reimbursement. Is that right, Michael?
I think that's there by agreement, yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Good
Yeah,
question.
again, Nate, this isn't intended to influence the capital planning of the district.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just to ensure that the follow through of the vote of the council is follow through, I guess.
Right, and I think Rig said it much more eloquently than I did. I understand the purpose and I understand the rationale. I just have issues. I just want to make sure it's more on the legal side and things like that.
Okay, and that seems to be the feeling, I know we have at least two committee members that are concerned about it. So my instinct is to postpone it to our next meeting and just see if we can get a little more clarity. Any other thoughts on that at this moment?
I'm assuming that the attorney will have an opportunity to, to give additional insight or make edits to the document. And perhaps if we could also entertain my thought process, maybe one more line item that says, that the funds, should be returned, back to the town, if it's not going to be used appropriately for whatever the initial project that the funds were approved for, and then the parties can certainly repetition for funds at a later date.
So Nate, can I handle that one too? Because this
Sure,
is
go ahead.
an easy parliamentary question.
Yep.
So Rick, in terms of procedure, the request would be made and there would be an order set up, a transfer order, and the council would vote on it. If this policy that we're talking about tonight is in place, the funds would not be sent to the district until the district actually had use for them, either through contract or PO or reimbursement, right? So if the funds were not used and the school district says, you know what, we've changed our mind, then it would come back to the council to rescind the original order. So no money transfers would have happened at that point. So the rescinding of the order is simply undoing the original order, and then we're back at ground zero again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it certainly makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so I was gonna ask real quick, what's the feeling here? We like able just to see the language tightened up?
There's no rush in this. So if you want clarity, maybe Michael, today's Thursday, maybe you can get a little bit of feedback by next Tuesday, because it's on the agenda for Tuesday. We do have the budget and finance Tuesday night beforehand to talk about it. If you don't have a recommendation, we'll probably just extend the hearing on Tuesday to the following meeting. It's already been advertised, so it doesn't have to be re-advertised. And then Jason can make his suggestions. So Jason's suggestions will be just that. It's just suggestions. And it would be up to the committees to recommend amendments based on those suggestions, and then up to the council to amend the order as it's currently written.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wood. Does that sound to the committee's liking?
Yeah, and I do want to thank Eric and Bill for bringing it to our attention. And I think it's got a good cause. We just got to make sure we're in the right,
Yeah,
Bus-
I see, I know what you're saying, Judy. Okay, so let's do that. Let's postpone this order to our next meeting. That seems to be the feeling of the committee. And we can move on, and thank you, everybody, for all the information. It's definitely something to think about. That's for sure.
Yeah. Just the last thought, if you haven't looked at the capital planning of the town and the district, you should get to know it pretty well. So for the middle school, which is the old high school, there's about $9 million worth of projects sitting out there for that school alone. And so there's capital planning is always that planning. It doesn't mean that there's resources or revenue behind it. It just means it's putting on the list out this year, next year, the year after, whenever. And we'd like to get to it if we have the revenue. So I think there's probably over $20 million on both projects, on both lists, if not more. Not everything's going to be done. Not everything can be funded, but get to know the projects, and then hopefully whatever this policy is in the end helps communicate, the requests and the transfers easier. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank
thank you, Mr. Wood. Thank you. Okay, good discussion, everybody. Some great questions there. I love how we kind of look at it from a bunch of different angles. All right, moving on, FY 23-0045, ratification of renewal cable television license agreement. Just real quick, before we start any discussion, tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dutton, but our discussions here, or anything, this has no impact on what rates could pay.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yep, has absolutely, we cannot negotiate Comcast rates. And I think that's something you probably all know, but the public does not know. So we have no ability to control the Comcast rates. Correct.
Okay, and if you want to just give us a quick overview of this host agreement, we appreciate it.
Sure, certainly. So we, over the last number of years, quite honestly, have been in the process of, in fits and starts of negotiating an agreement with Comcast. The delay, I'll call it a delay, but the long period of time, the years of delay, actually have not worked to our detriment. To some extent, they've worked to our benefit, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the agreement itself gives us capital contributions of $230,000. Which will probably be stretched over the course of the agreement, over the 10 years of the agreement. So we'd be looking at about $23,000 a year, plus a little bit, plus a small percentage based on their calculation. And that is fine. We've because they actually have capital maintenance responsibilities for some of the fiber that's strung throughout town, and that offsets some of the additional capital that we had wanted. So that's good. We've secured the maximum allowable franchise fee of 5% for the town and BTV. That ensures that BTV will be sustainable for the next 10 years to the extent that people maintain cable television. We've negotiated high definition for the local access channel. And the maintenance, what I mentioned before, the maintenance of the fiber connection between the Academy building to the BTV studio, as well as from BTV to Comcast. They will also cover they will also maintain and or replace the fiber connection from the schools, which the high school, where our fiber picks up the entire district. They will also maintain that under this agreement, so that part is good. Let's see, we negotiated something that really has no financial benefit to the town per se, but we've improved protection for private property owners. We've made it less costly, meaning that private property owners, the company is obligated to return property to its existing state if they are even if they're on private property. Obviously they have to be on private property with an owner's permission, but they are obligated now to return that property to its existing state after they finished the work. We've negotiated lower cost underground installations for those customers that require underground installations. They won't do it for free as they do above ground, but we have negotiated a lower cost. We've asked for a credit for outages of longer than 24 hours, which we've had a number of over the last few years. We don't look forward to power outages or cable outages at all, but if they happen, at least folks will get a credit if it lasts longer than 24 hours. We have implemented a new permitting requirement for any Comcast pedestals or any Comcast work in our road layouts. They must get a permit from our highway department, and that is important because they do pay a permit fee, but that's really not the point. We get to control and dictate the terms of their excavation and repair and eventual repaving of in the case of roads, but also how they affix pedestals in the town layout. So that was important to us as well. We did negotiate a senior citizen discount. The maximum that they will do, they do not, and the maximum that any other city and town that's negotiated gets. And they will not put that in the agreement itself. They'll do that as a side letter, which I think is I've copied here in your materials. But that overall, it's a decent agreement. We always like to get more capital money, but I think we've been treated quite fairly throughout this process, and I think the revenue stream is going to be good. One of the things that is important to note, and most people don't know, is that Comcast only generates the 5% off of cable bills. So if you have cut the cord and you only get internet service, the town does not benefit from that at all. And the reason that's important is because that 5% really funds the work that BTV does to put out public meetings, to broadcast public meetings, local sports events and all the programming they do. And if revenue over a period of time, more and more people will cut the cord and the revenue will begin to shrink, that means that BTV's program down there will begin to shrink as well. So that's an important thing to note. There has been effort on Beacon Hill for a number of years to try to make the internet portion of the cable bill accessible for the 5% as well, but that hasn't gone anywhere. So that's one thing that Jeff Fowler at BTV is working pretty hard to try to get the legislature to understand that they need to take some action there, because eventually, as Jeff will say and tell anybody, eventually cable television just won't exist, and everybody will be on streaming services, and that's just the way it'll be. So, which is neither good nor bad, but it does mean that the revenue stream for the services like BTV that provide public access will shrink up. So, and I think that was the other thing I wanted to point out. Again, we get calls all the time. Why can't you get Verizon here? Why can't you get, whatever other service in Bridgewater? This is not an exclusive arrangement. This is a franchise agreement with Comcast. Anybody else is welcome to come into Bridgewater at any time and offer similar services. Realistically, that doesn't happen in hardly any community because of the capital expense required to put in all the stuff that Comcast has already spent the money to put in. So for instance, Verizon Fios, the capital cost of running fiber, Verizon fiber to everybody's house is enormous. And a number of years ago, I want to say about 12, 15 years ago, Verizon made the decision to stop installing and that it shifted their business focus. So you'll see some towns, I think Rainham is one of them, does have Fios, and they brought Fios almost up to Bridgewater from the south, and it just, they made that corporate decision. So it wasn't anything about Bridgewater, it was just that they weren't going to invest in that service anymore, at least the capital side of that service. And they were going to leverage what they'd already done as much as they could, but they weren't going to continue on wiring all the cities and towns. So I think that's it. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
All right, that was a pretty comprehensive overview. Thank you, Mr. Dutton. Just real quick, I read through this contract prior when we were supposed to have the last meeting. I think that maximum senior discount is what, $34. Nothing huge, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Nate, you kind of broke up there, but the senior discount, I think it's like a 50-cent discount. It's not huge, but it is the most that they offer anywhere else in the state.
Thank you. I'll open it up to anybody else that has a question for Mr. Dutton.
I do. I did not see, is there a credit amount an amount that's been allocated for any outages more than 24 hours? Like, is there a dollar amount? And does that dollar amount change if the outage is more than 48 hours and longer?
I think, good question, Rig. I think the credit on your bill is going to be equal to the prorated monthly amount that you're out of power. So if you're out of power for, 15 days, then your bill is going to be half of what it was.
Okay, and I guess the follow-up question is, let's say it's not a Comcast issue, but it's more of an electrical issue. Does Comcast still provide the credit? Because without electricity, there's no cable.
Exactly. I think the short answer is no, they won't give you credit if it's strictly an electrical issue, if it's an electric outage. I think it's just a Comcast outage.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
And actually, this is probably just ridiculous, but how come we're calling it contract a Comcast on a document? Are they not Xfinity?
So their corporate name is whatever it says there. And Xfinity, I think, is their DBA, but that is yeah, they're actually. It's too many pages.
And Comcast is a holding company, and Xfinity is their local internet provider.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ray.
Yeah, Comcast Cable Communications Management LLC, I think is the.
Okay,
entity.
and the only reason I ask this question, I'm thinking about, senior citizens who may think this is separate from Xfinity, so that's all.
No, that's a good point. Honestly, most people, will post this, on the website and it'll be out there, but very few people actually ever go and look at the franchise agreement. So, but that's a good point.
I know when I type in Comcast, I end up going to Xfinity. All right, any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Motion to approve, Chris?
Thank you, Chris.
Second,
Second from Brian, thank you. Josh, if you could do a roll call, please.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Brian.
aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on, FY 23-046, acceptance of gift. Natural Resources Trust of Bridgewater, $25,000. Now at our last meeting, we did make a recommendation affirmative to allocate $40,000 towards this project. And this is taking additional money from outside sources to help us out. Is that correct, Mr. Dutton?
That is correct. So this is $25,000 gift came from the NRTB, the Natural Resources Trust of Bridgewater, but it represents $15,000 that they had received from the Taunton River Watershed Council, and then a $10,000 gift that they had received from the Sheehan family companies.
All right. So essentially, we have $75,000 that we can allocate to this project now.
65,
65, sorry.
right.
It should be on the finance committee. Any other questions? Questions?
Motion to approve?
Thank you, Rick.
Second?
Second to Chris. You can do a roll call, please, Josh.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to our final business for this evening, FY 23-047, 2023 election, debt exclusion ballot question. Mr. Dutton.
All right, so I think most people probably remember, or maybe not actually, because it was a very low voter turnout, but we had an election almost a year ago in March of 2022 for the reconstruction of the Bristol Plymouth Regional Vocational Technical School. And that was believe there are 7 towns in the district, and that vote passed district-wide. It actually passed by a larger margin in Bridgewater than any other town, but it did pass. All the voters in the 7-town district approved that. So what we explained to people when they voted was that pays for that, or that doesn't pay for anything. That gives the district the authorization to plow ahead with a new school. How we pay for it, how each individual town pays for it is up to the individual town. So our projected amount that we would have to pay this year is about $200,000 and almost $300,000, and that goes up roughly in year 5, counting from here out, to about $1.2 million, and then will be roughly $1.2 million for the next 20 some odd years until it starts to scale back after the 30 and after 34 years it's nothing. So we are proposing a debt exclusion. For those that don't know, a debt exclusion is considered a temporary increase in taxes to pay for a specific item. In this case, our assessment for the Bristol Plymouth Tech School. And after that school is paid off, after the 34 years, that additional tax then goes away. Not unlike the debt exclusion that we're paying for the Mitchell School, but a little different because it's a regional technical school, but not unlike the debt exclusion that we voted to pay for the Mitchell School some time ago. So this is really the only way we can effectively pay for the school without fairly substantial, well, $1.2 million in expenditure cuts. And I think the finance committee members know that there's not a whole lot of fluff in our budget. So while we would love to be able to absorb $1.2 million for 20 some odd years into the budget, it's just not feasible. So we are hoping that the town's folks will understand that. So we're putting that on the ballot for April election. But happy to answer any questions.
So Julie, so when they voted in April, including myself, were the voters aware that it would be a debt exclusion and not just a permanent thing, or they won't know until this?
No, we tried to be very clear. I mean, it was such a quiet, we didn't control really, we didn't control the election at all. But to the extent that we could get the message out there that, this is the question is, it's essentially a two-step process. That's what we were telling voters. And this is the first step. If you vote to approve the school, that's great. But then you're going to have to vote to approve the funding mechanism. So how many voters heard that? I don't know, Julie. But,
I know,
that's what we
I'm
said.
just putting it on the record. The other thing is, I thought there was one town maybe that didn't vote for it, but I feel like, wouldn't they have to pay for it if overall, it's not like you can say, hey, we don't want to be the ones that don't want it, because if they're going to do it, they're going to do it, right?
So, fortunately or unfortunately, the way that the process works in this case is that all of the district residents are allowed to vote, and it's the majority of that vote. It really isn't a town by town election. Right. So the majority of, I'm not sure about. You may be right. There may be.
I think there was maybe one or
against.
two that voted no, but I feel like you said, the majority rules, because you can't say, well, you don't want it, so you don't pay, and then we're going to pick up the slack for those towns that voted no, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So everybody's in. I can tell you that Freetown has asked to join the district, and they like the council. The way the agreement works is every member town has to vote to allow an additional town in. Bridgewater voted to allow Freetown to come in, but probably about 8 months, 9, 10 months ago. And so I think they're waiting on one or two other towns that have Springtown meetings to approve Freetown. So the numbers I gave you are based upon not having Freetown in the district. So Freetown's sort of assumption into the district will reduce our assessment by probably a little bit.
And we'll have the paperwork to support that when the time comes. So when the auditors come,
Absolutely.
all right, thank you.
Boy, you know, and looking through the numbers here, you answered my question for me. It looks like FY 23, the medium house, if this debt exclusion did pass, would be $8 per year. And then over the course of it, it'd be about $33 per year, right?
Right, it would be $8 for FY 25, and then it would increase then it would over the 5 years or so, it would increase, and it maxes out at $33, little over $33.
What are you using for a median, like 375?
Sorry, Nate.
What are you using for a median? Off the top of your head?
Oh, the mean value.
Yeah.
I don't have it on my spreadsheet, but I can find out.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You know, one thing I do like about this is that this puts it in front of the voters and they make the decision by having the ballot question. And if they say no, well, you know, then there's the consequences to it out of the general budget. But it makes sense to me that yes, this has to be put in front of the voters as a debt exclusion. Because we got to pay for it.
So I can tell you that Rainham also voted for the new school, but Rainham put a debt exclusion on their ballot and it failed. So Rainham, I can tell you after having spoken with them last week, is in a real bind right now, and they don't know what they're going to do.
So it sounds like that if this time comes, we need to communicate very clearly with the citizens of this town.
Exactly. So that honestly puts the burden on us to make sure that we're very clear about what's going to happen and why it should happen. But Rainham also surprisingly has a larger share of students at Bristol Plymouth than we do. So.
Right, it also will affect us indirectly because if Rainham votes no and they voted no, and now they're gonna have to pull the money out from somewhere else, which is less money for our own school, you know, the regular school district, right?
Yeah, good point, Julie.
Potentially, yep. That's sort of a political decision they'll have to make.
I have a couple of questions. I think Julie might have answered the first one. If I'm hearing correctly, the majority vote rules. So whether or not, if you're a town that votes no for it, if the majority of the towns vote yes, then you're on the hook, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. So the follow-up questions are, you know, is there an agreement that speaks to, you know, equity with respect to, you know, the number of students from different towns that would get acceptance into this vocational school? And what does that agreement look like?
That's a great question. And there is a regional agreement, which is quite old, but it does speak, but it just went through a revision process. Let me see if I can quickly pull it up. While somebody else is asking a question, I'll see if I can pull it up.
All right, and while you're pulling it up, the additional questions that I have relates to, you know, the taxes that's going to go up. Will it be real estate taxes? Will it be taxes on, you know, like tobacco and alcohol? Would it be, you know,
It would be property taxes, Rig. It'd be, if the debt exclusion happened, it'd be through, you know, the 2.5.
So it'd be property tax.
Yeah, it'd be property taxes, yep. And then what we end up doing is we pay per student, if I remember correctly, Rig. So if we have 10 students, there's a per student cost. And that's what the town pays.
Exactly. So we pay a per student. It's a little cleaner and a little more straightforward than our BR district. Our BR district. We pay strictly per student. So BP, Bristol Plymouth has a budget, and then it's allocated according to the student populations for all the 7-member towns. And the same is true with capital. So if for some reason, you know, we right now contribute a little over 10% of the population for Bristol Plymouth. And if that drops, then our capital assessment that particular year would drop as well. Conversely, if it increases, if our population percentage increases, then we'd be paying a little more than what's projected. So that does float. It's not fixed. That our payment each year is not fixed. It's not a fixed $1.2 million.
I just have a couple of follow-up questions. So thank you so much. Has these towns collectively looked to see if there are possible federal dollars to help offset some of the costs? And also, what about corporate dollars with respect to, you know, some of the unions that exist that have, you know, a number of budgets? Because obviously, you know, the unions will benefit from it because the students are going to a vocational school, that they're learning the trade, and then they're going to be recruiting, you know, the talent. I'm just sort of thinking outside the box instead of putting all that pressure on taxpayers, whether it be Bridgewater or other towns, to purchase this or to build this new school.
Nope, that's a good question. I'm looking for the percentage. I'm not sure the percentage, but it's a very large percentage of the school itself will be offset by the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So let me see if I can
I
find it.
thought it was 40% or something.
It's up there.
It's-
Yeah, it's up there.
Nate, if you don't mind, also, let me answer one of Rick's earlier questions. So if you look at on the town manager's page of the town website and find the budget documents from last year, you'll see sources of revenue. And that splits it out into 3 different sections. The first section has real estate and debt exclusion. And so in this case, for this school, if the town passes it, it'll be another line of debt exclusion in the first section. So real estate taxes are treated separately, and then debt exclusion is added on top of that. In your bill that you get for your house, though, it's commingled by finance.
Okay. And have we thought about taxing other things opposed to just real estate to, again, offset dollars?
We're going to start taxing finance committee meetings. The longer the meeting, the more the tax.
You know, Rick,
I need to shut my mouth.
you know what, Rick, it's actually one thing I've learned over the years is that, you know, the town really can't just put taxes on what it wants. It's up to the Commonwealth to prove that the towns can tax, right? So that-
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that you're exactly right. So we are, and I've had this discussion with a number of people. So we are only allowed to tax what the state legislature lets us tax. And so the meals and lodging, those are 2 things that the legislature permitted us to tax. And we can, actually Councilor Wood's proposal for the 3% cannabis tax, that's something that the legislature allows us to adopt as a local option. But other than that, we're pretty fixed on real estate tax, personal property tax, motor vehicle excise tax, and then the few that I mentioned that bring in a little bit of money, but that's about it. We can't tax really anything else without state approval.
I just have one more question. Please don't tax me, Michael, and I apologize, everyone. The last question that I have really pertains to all of the towns that are part of this consortium. Has there been any initiatives to kind of have like an all towns meeting to start talking about this versus very siloed, each town kind of discussing it on their own? Because I think it would be helpful to understand, for everybody to understand the shared implication, the shared challenges, and perhaps the shared opportunities, opposed to operating very siloed and each town kind of making their own decisions, similar to how Rainham said, ooh, we can't do this, but Rainham will be impacted if other towns vote for this.
And Mr. Dutton, if I could just add to what Rig is saying right now too. So if we go on that expansion not being in silos, would it be possible for the towns to go get bonded all together? Would we get better rates, like we've done with retirement accounts?
Nope, I'll answer Rig's question first. I did attend one meeting that was convened by the mayor of Taunton with all the towns, and we had a good discussion. That was early in the process. But it's interesting that every town has their sort of parochial interests, and some towns, it was clear at that meeting, this was before the vote. It was very clear at that meeting that some towns, selectmen mostly during that in that meeting, were dead set opposed, and they were going to do everything they could to convince their town not to vote, or the voters in their town not to vote for it. Since then, we haven't reconvened. But one of the reasons, I think, goes to Nate's question about bonding. This project is bonded through the regional district, through BP. It's each town isn't doing in their individual bond. It's all done as one bond through Bristol Plymouth. And so that's sort of negates the need for the towns to sort of get together and try to coordinate, financing, so to speak. So there really hasn't been a whole lot of communication among the towns since then, which is, it's certainly not good, but there just hasn't been.
It would be interesting to see if there was some type of, I don't know, I'm just thinking like Facebook. I'm just using Facebook. That's not the platform, but some type of platform that the Bristol County towns that would be on the hook for something like this, where the message goes out to the residents, and the residents can start hearing and start sharing their thoughts and their ideas and how they feel about having their real estate taxes go up to support something that some towns find valuable and other towns, because of their disposition, may not find valuable. And of course, the conversation would extend into, equity, in terms of number of students that the school would allow per town. So I don't know who would need to initiate something like that, but I think, certainly getting the communication out to the town residents as a shared communication platform, opposed to just the mayor of this, and that's great that you were part of these meetings, Michael, but it does impact the residents who have to come out the pocket for this.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great idea. And having a broader conversation with the people that are ultimately paying for it is probably something you really can't do outside of social media.
I would think the other forum would be, BP Regional School Committee meeting. Another good forum to go together. But also I hear the frustration a little bit too from Mr. Dunn, politics and town politics involved in this, and their partners who are dragging their feet through this whole process. To make for unity, but it'd be great if it could happen. You got a question, Chris?
I did, yeah. So I just had one question, particularly as it relates to the enrollment numbers. Do we have a historical perspective of how those numbers have fluctuated? So we can, obviously you can't predict with total accuracy, project on a, go forward basis, but do we have those kind of historical numbers to get a sense of, how much it might go up or down in the future?
We do, and actually, we are very steady. I mean, we're at 10, almost 11%, and we were at 11%, 12% a couple of years ago. And so it's hovered within probably 1 or 2 percentage points consistently.
And where do we fall, Michael, in comparison to other towns? Are we at the bottom of the barrel, or are we in the middle?
We're always at the top. No, in terms of share of population, so Taunton, for example, contributes almost 43% of the population. Interestingly, Rainham provides over 14% of the population, which was surprising. So it puts their annual contribution, much higher than ours at almost 11%. Middleborough is about 13%. And then Dayton is about 7.5%, and Berkeley's about 6.5%.
So Michael, it might be worthwhile. I think the council was provided like an overview or a video of the items. Maybe if that can be shared with the finance committee, that'd be helpful too.
A video of the school building project?
Well, yeah, I think there was like a whole discussion that was put together and packet for the council before.
I'll take a look.
And Chris, there is like presentations out there on the school.
Right, I think, Bill, was that shared with us, or like you said, with the town when we were voting for it last April? I feel like I've seen
Yeah.
some.
I think when we put it on the, agenda before, that the council was given a packet of information related to the school. And one of the things that was remarked was how high the population is at the school. And Rick, you should know, and I know your kids are probably younger, there's no trade or industrial arts or anything like that at BR, into the degree that you have these programs at BP. It's just there's nothing at BR. So that's why you see, so many students go over to BP to take the carpentry.
Yeah, I'm a Southeastern graduate, so, certainly there is, the trades have taken a beating, in the last decade or so. And it'll be great for trades to come back. And there's a lot of discussions, as all you guys know, the price of college, is that even equitable? Is it fair? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed to trades. I'm opposed to property tax increase. I'm speaking for myself as a property owner, and I'm also speaking on behalf of all of y'all who may own your homes. And so I guess if you could share that video, Michael, that Bill suggested, and also maybe the data that you highlighted that gives an outline of Taunton 23%, I think I heard, and then all of the other towns, and then perhaps. I don't know, I may be proactive myself and just create a group town and just propose the question, how do you feel about your property taxes going up to build a new BP school? I don't know. I may be proactive in doing so. So I'm just putting it out there, or I may not. So, but this is good for discussion.
But the thing is, I think, is that they're gonna have to pay for it whether we
want it or not.
at
Yep.
conclusion or not, because we already voted in April for the project to be done.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
That's correct. And I will say
We're
too.
moving forward with it regardless.
Yep.
Or else?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I will say too that Bristol Plymouth turns students away every year. The school is small, it's outdated, and they can't accommodate everybody that wants to go there.
Right.
You're a Southeastern grad. I'm from Easton originally, and Southeastern has grown by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
I graduated from 08 in 87, dating myself. I don't think BP's changed. Well, they built some buildings in the back, but I really
We used to crush them in sports. So.
yeah. Well, my son plays on the hockey team. They combine with Southeast.
I helped build that building that's next to, I think, the sheet metal shop.
Over
at
at BP.
Southeastern.
Yeah.
I do remember, to Bill's point earlier, I think it was a town council meeting or something previously where there was a really good presentation with, I want to say it was the engineers or something, and how much, Bristol Plymouth really needed the new facilities, and how in dire straits the building and the facilities kind of were, for a learning environment. And so
if you do a search on MSBA project /home or Bristol Plymouth Regional Tech School, they have a specific page, it looks like, set up for projects.
thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All
Yeah,
right. Anybody else? We've had some great discussion on all the topics tonight, but this one especially. But do we have any more thoughts, comments, questions?
So do we
Motion
want
to approve, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ray, for the second. Josh, if you could do a roll call for us, please.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. For old business, we got none additional items for discussion. We need to figure out our next date to meet. Would that be the 27th, Josh?
Yes, yep. Yeah, because
20
the town council will refer items to us next week.
Next week on the 21st.
Yep.
So hopefully that works, everybody, the 27th at 7 p.m.
What's the date? The 27th?
The 27th, Monday, the 27th.
That should be fine with me. As long if you can put it on the calendar, as you've been doing, Josh, thank you. And congratulations, Josh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
awesome. Little boy, little girl,
Little girl.
that's awesome, man. She's the apple of your eyes.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
she is.
This tattoo stuck on top of your head and keep it moving.
Yep.
That's great. Sleep when you can, Josh. Sleep when you can.
Yep.
All right, so we'll look forward to the 27th. Nobody has anything else, then we'll entertain our favorite motion of the evening.
Motion to adjourn. Chris.
Second.
A second?
Second.
Thank you, Julie. If you could do a roll call, please, Chris. I mean, Josh.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting is adjourned.
All right,
Thank
thank
you,
you, everyone.
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 Thank you.
Bye.